Halloween is not a random spook fest we invented to justify buying a 12-foot Home Depot skeleton. It's a patchwork quilt of sorts, an ancient seasonal hinge layered with church calendars, immigrant folkways, civic compromises, and pop culture masks. The oldest layer is Samhain, the Celtic years turning from light to dark. Centuries later come the Christian days of Allhallowtide. Then, crossing the Atlantic, immigrant customs collide with urban life and produce trick-or-treat. And finally, Hollywood dresses the old fears in new faces. If you're looking for one pure origin of Halloween, you'll be disappointed. If you're looking for a braid that held communities together every time the light got short, you're in the right lane. So if Halloween is the braid, let's start at the oldest strand. The night the year wobbled and the fire was more shield than show, Samhain. Now the Celts didn't picture time as a road, they pictured it more of as a wheel, with birth, growth, harvest, and decay all on its spokes. And Samhain was the hinge. It was neither summer nor winter, but a liminal crack where rules loosened. Fields stood bare as rib bones, and the year exhaled, and with it, every household did its winter math. How many mouths can we feed? How many sacks do we need? And how many hopeful prayers do we need answered? When nature empties its pockets, superstition starts to look a lot more like common sense. Now, these households intentionally let hearths die and reignited them from a communal need fire, which was kindled under ritual rules. People and livestock passed between the twin bonfires for a blessing, one part health ritual, one part insurance policy. It's practical theology. If winter is a siege, solidarity is the wall. But the other world pressed close. Irish tradition sets it next door, beneath a hill, inside a mound, or across a misted lake, and the Tuatha De Danann retreat and become the Ishi, or the people of the mounds. Think of not Tinkerbell, but weather systems with cheekbones. And on Samhain night, those doors opened, and you didn't go looking for trouble, you left bread so trouble passed by your door. Now with Samhain, camouflage was step one. Early costumes weren't cute, and they weren't meant to be. They were supposed to be confusing. You wore hides, covered yourself in soot, or donned bone masks, anything to blur your outline so that the night would forget to notice you. That is where we get guising. It's sympathetic magic with a practical streak. Step two was reciprocity. Giving butter, bread, or a piece of salted meat at the threshold, giving diplomacy in groceries. The choreography survives in October's soft power to this very day. A knock, a performance, a treat, and a truce. And in the sparks, people looked for hints. With apple peels, you tossed them to learn the initials of your fated loved one. You paired nuts that burnt together or popped apart, giving you an idea of how your romantic life would be. Humble auguries organizing anxiety. When Robert Burns wrote his poem Halloween in 1785, he wasn't inventing the fun, he was preserving an operating system. But this hinge didn't stay pagan forever, and when empires change hands, they don't blow out the candles, they just rename the vigil. Enter Allhallowtide. Now, centuries later, the church didn't cancel the hinge, it just rewrote the script. In 1609, Boniface IV consecrated the Pantheon as Santa Maria ad Martires, honoring all martyrs in one sweep. By the 8th and 9th centuries, All Saints' Day had settled on November the 1st, and All Souls' Day, giving respect to all other peoples who had passed, fell on November 2nd. The result was a 3-day arc landing exactly where Samhain sit. A vigil on October 31st, All Saints' Day on November 1st, and Souls' Day on November the 2nd. Now, the doorway choreography found a new language as well. Instead of leaving food for fair folk, the poor and the children went house to house singing and praying for a household's dead. In exchange, they got soul cakes, which were small spiced buns marked with a cross. Church bells tolled slowly, passing bells and devil kneels, not to frighten, but to make the living notice time. It's the same threshold, but new verbs. Not for protection now, but for mercy. And then, in the 14th century, the bubonic plague gave us an image that we still can't quit. The Danse Macabre. Skeletons marching kings, clergy, and laborers into one undead democracy. Now, today's smiling lawn skeleton is a softened descendant of those frescoes. Even the name Halloween is a linguistic fossil of the overlay, All Hallows' Eve shortened by centuries of conversation. Christian cadence hummed over older rhythms, and together they made a season both holy and practical. Now, if the church gave the season bells and bread, folklore answered with a face and a flame. If prayers light one side of the road, a trickster's lantern lights the other. Enter the story of Stingy Jack. Now, folklore hands us a boundary story to match the calendar. Stingy Jack was an arch schemer, a serial undertipper, and he tricked the devil twice. First, he invited him for a drink, coaxed him into turning into a coin to pay because he had no money. And once the devil changed, Jack tossed him in his pocket next to a silver cross, and wouldn't let him out until the devil gave Jack 10 years reprieve from claiming his soul. Now, after those 10 years, the devil returned, but Jack had another favor. He asked for an apple from a nearby tree, and the devil started climbing to retrieve it. Now, as the devil went up, Jack carved crosses into the bark, preventing the devil from coming down until he yet again made another deal for another 10 more years. Now, Jack ultimately passes because even in folklore, you have to pay your debts. And when he died, heaven refused him for too many broken promises, and hell, bound by its own contract and probably still nursing the humiliation, kept him out. Jack didn't leave empty-handed, though, as the devil flicked Jack a single coal from the eternal hearth and sent him walking forever between worlds. Jack hollowed out a turnip and set the ember inside and became Jack of the Lantern, or as we know him, Jack-o'-lantern. But the story caution is clear. If you burn every bridge, exile becomes your address. Now, Jack's lantern solved practical problems, too. People in Ireland and Scotland carved grim little faces into turnips and beets and set them at the thresholds, not for decor, but as statements, saying this doorway is claimed and watched. Travelers back then told of will-o'-the-wisps, ghost lights over bogs that lured the unwary. Now, today, science has supplied marsh gas oxidation as the explanation for these ghost lights, but folklore had already filed the advice: don't follow unfamiliar lights into the dark. Now, in a month of spooky stories and ghastly movies, that's still pretty good evidence even today. In North America, the pumpkin took the part it was born to play. It was both bigger, brighter, and kinder to knives than the beets or turnips that was used in Europe, but the function remained unchanged. The medium just evolved. A face lit at the threshold still says what the communal ember once said at the hearth: we will keep watch together. And a little October fun fact as well: whenever you're starting to make your jack-o'-lanterns and you're scooping out the seeds and guts that are inside the pumpkin, always remember that the scooper gets the toasted seeds. This dates back all the way to Samhain, as rituals must respect labor. So if someone starts to claim your pumpkin pie ingredients, you set them straight with some history. Now, as Jack's ember guards the doorway, we must note that every threshold has company. If you watch the railing where there's a lantern, there's usually a black cat and a set of manners. Now, if the jack-o'-lantern is the sentence, a black cat is the punctuation that makes you reread it. Reputation depends on address. Now, in parts of Britain and Japan, black cats are lucky. Specifically in Britain, maritime families prize them as good omens, which still feels like the right opinion to keep. But in early modern Europe, they start to acquire the witch's familiar label from a moral panic disguised as zoology. Now, the deeper constant of Halloween is that a threshold attracts manners. Samhain placed food on the step. Allhallowtide substituted prayers and cakes, and modern porches push bowls of wrapped diplomacy towards small-masked envoys who knock politely and then move along. A candle in the window pulls the dead towards love, and a lantern on a stoop pulls children towards safety. A cat on the rails pull the neighborhood into conversation, and all of this comes together to represent October. And while October's visuals are pretty, the underlying technology is social navigation. Light the edges, mark the crossings, and teach the rules by practicing them. Now, all of those little rules of crossing, light here, offerings there, eventually need a modern treaty. The same doorway but new words. We call it trick or treat. Irish and Scottish communities crossed the Atlantic with guising, lantern lore, and the autumn temperament. American abundance handed them the pumpkin and a talent for scaling spectacle. Harvest socials became parades. Church basements learned to smell permanently of cider, and porch steps turned into little altars of welcome. Now, coming to America, urban life also produced a problem. The season's old license for inversion surfaced as Mischief Night, Cabbage Night here, Devil's Night there, and sometimes the pranks went from humorous to expensive. Communities wrote a brilliant piece of social code, trick or treat. Now, the phrase originates in North American print in the 1920s and 30s, especially in Canadian papers, crystallizing a bargain that had been gesturing at itself for years. The child makes a symbolic treat, the household pays a nominal tribune, and both sides keep the peace and wake up to the same mailbox. Now, the bargain proved adaptable. Schools and churches hosted parties, neighborhoods mapped safe loops, and trunk-or-treats turned parking lots into rings of mobile porches. When the late 20th century news panic about razor blades and poison exploded, the ritual absorbed the anxiety by normalizing factory-sealed candy. Now, systematic looks have found vanishingly few stranger danger cases matching the myth, but sealed wrappers support trust at the speed of a child's sprint between houses. Halloween's survival trick is always the same. Change shape to stay yourself. And of course, doors aren't the only places where we practice October's grammar. Some gates swing wider. Some places, names are carved in stone. Let's take a walk into the cemetery by candlelight. Now, ancestor season is the autumn's other half, and cultures finish the sentence in their own handwriting. In Mexico, Dia de los Muertos turns November the 1st and the 2nd into a conversation with the dead. Home ofrendas grow with cempasúchil, where photographs, bread, favorite foods. Families keep vigil in cemeteries that look more like night markets of memory than fields of sorrow. In Central and Eastern Europe, All Saints and All Souls flood graveyards with light. In the Philippines, Unidas becomes multi-day reunions around graves, cleaning, prayer, food, and laughter. They're not detours from Halloween, but global rhymes. Now, with cemeteries, there's a darker-sounding historical thread, which matches up with the body-snatching panics of the 18th and 19th centuries. Enter Danse Macabre, Now, around this time, medical schools needed cadavers, and resurrectionists, or grave robbers, supplied them. Communities answered back with mort safes, iron cages over graves, and they hired watchmen. Churchyards briefly looked like botanical gardens of wrought iron. And that anxiety lingers in October's set dressing. Faux iron fences, padlocks, crows, but the image that endures is candlelight. Under flame, names go from stone to story, and the space shifts from forbidden and hollowed to shared and joined. Halloween borrows that alchemy from porches and sidewalks and teaches it to children with chocolate. Names lit by flame become stories again, and stories don't like to stay still. They climb from books into movie masks and then back onto our porches. Now, before monsters had wardrobes, they had voices. Poe scores dread like chamber music. Sheridan Le Fanu's Carmilla adds a seductive vampire a quarter century before Stoker. M.R. James lets catalog cards come back with teeth. Algernon Blackwood makes the forest think. Shirley Jackson turns quiet houses into confession. Brad Bradbury in The Halloween Tree turns October into catechism. Neil Gaiman in The Graveyard Book moves a child into the best neighborhood of the afterlife. And film hands us faces that you can buy in a party store. Universal's 1930s cycle pins down Dracula's cape, Frankenstein's bolts, the mummy's bandages, and the Wolfman's moon. Hammer paints them in Technicolor, while Psycho puts the monster in the mirror. Night of the Living Dead puts it into a crowd, and The Exorcist puts it into the living room. Halloween ties a blank mask and a synth heartbeat to October 31st directly. Later, Scream folds the rules right into the plot, while The Ring imports a new rhythm of dread. Get Out unmasks a system, and Hereditary organizes grief. The Babadook gives sorrow a top hat, and TV and animation keep the gentle beat. Treehouse of Horror, Over the Garden Wall, The Nightmare Before Christmas, Coraline. Folklore never vanished, it just learned cinema. And to stay culturally live, Halloween also keeps changing masks, and so do its monsters. Now, once Halloween packed the costume trunk, the look of October traveled fast, but when it arrived abroad, each place spoke October with an accent. Now, once the look spread, the world answered on its own. In Japan, theme parks like Tokyo Disneyland and Universal Studios Japan made October a spectacle, while Shibuya turned Halloween into a costume runway. Less door-knocking, more self-portraiture. In Mexico, Halloween coexists with Dia de los Muertos as children may trick-or-treat on the 31st, then spend the next 2 days welcoming in ancestors. Across the British Isles, the holiday is as much revival as import. Older games return with LEDs. Turnips politely yield to pumpkins, while Gallica's Samhain and the Basque Country's Gaubelza reawaken autumn rites. La Castagnata and Magosto celebrate chestnuts. Italy's Ognissanti blends cemetery visits with almond-baked bone cookies. Media exports the mask rack, local calendars supply the meaning. Light, food, names, thresholds, presents, these are all constants, yet under all the accents, the same choreography persists. A door, a knock, a mask, a gift, and a safe goodbye. So let's delve a little bit more into the doorway grammar out loud. If you strip the holiday down to its verbs, a door, a knock, a mask, an offering, and a safe exit. Samhain's offerings, Allhallowtide's souling, and trick-or-treat all use the same interface with different content. Children practice, approach, and ask. Households practice welcome and release. Neighbors practice consent with a porch light. Now, modern tweaks with a teal pumpkin signals for allergy-safe treats, mapped routes for tiny legs, parking lot trunk or treats all serve the same ancient purpose: to mark the path, keep the crossing orderly, and let everyone come home proud of how the street behaved. Now, if the interface is simple, why does it feel so necessary? Well, because a little safe fear and a lot of polite license teach us something we need when November shows up. Now, safe fear is what psychologists call benign masochism. Anthropologists called it ritual inversion. The translation is the same. We like safe fear and the temporary license because they teach us what we need in November. Costumes cover and confess. You try on a version of yourself the rest of the year keeps backstage. Kids discover courage one porch at a time, and adults remember that generosity at scale feels better than any single bag of candy. Now the night ends, but the rehearsal stays in the bones. We practiced moving toward the unknown and found we could do it together. Practice is great, but guidelines are better. Before we head deeper into the weeds and the cornfields, a few plain-spoken rules are what is keeping the spell intact. Mainly, if you keep a light on, you're in. If you keep it dark, you're out. You let both choices be respectable. Be generous. The unit economics of sugar are shockingly favorable to social peace, and respect ingenuity more than budget. A sheet with conviction beats a plastic masterpiece without joy. If you honor the saints and the souls in whatever register your family uses, names said out loud, candles were allowed, and the small plate on an ofrenda if that's your language. And keep the spell. Don't hoard from the bowl, don't mock the shy, but do admire the cardboard gravestone with a terrible pun, as someone Saturday has basically become that joke. Now, these rules are how, but the why is a little bit older. The 4 strands twisted tight enough to hold through the winter, but it's time to tug on the braid itself. In the end, Halloween is a living system with 4 sturdy strands. The Celtic hinge gives timing and fire. The Christian overlay gives remembrance and prayer. Immigrant and municipal improvisations give door-to-door choreography. Cinema and culture keep refreshing the mask rack. What doesn't move is the grammar. Mark the thin time, light the dark, feed the living and symbolically the dead, and practice being together in public. It's never been a pure origin story, always a conversation between fear and fellowship. It's the same holiday, but with a new outfit almost every century. And although we've talked about Samhain, braids have neighbors, not just single parents. Which is why tidy origin tales saying, Halloween is Roman, need a gentle eyebrow. Now, let's actually visit Rome without giving it the deed. Victorian writers loved connecting Halloween to Pomona, the goddess of fruit. It's tidy, apples in October, Pomona with her orchard, boom, origin. But the trouble is chronology and evidence. Now, apple games in Celtic and British tradition likely converged with harvest reality rather than descending from a specific Roman rite. If you want Roman funeral vibes, Lemuria and Feralia in May and February handled restless dead, but not autumn bounty. So when someone says Halloween comes from Pomona, the best line is, it's not a family tree, it's more of a neighborhood. Also, Pomona brought the snacks, but she didn't throw the party. Now, if Pomona didn't throw the party, homeowners did, by carving protection into their houses. From Latin footnotes to lentil magic, witch bottles, and chalked symbols, early homes used modified architecture against malice. Builders scratched bad luck wards, such as daisy wheels or Marian symbols, near chimneys and doors as spiritual fire breaks. Excavation turned up witch bottles, which was stoneware jugs buried under thresholds stuffed with pins, nails clipping, hair, and urine. Counter curses meant to bounce harm back. Conservators even find concealed shoes or mummified cats in old walls. Now, unsettling to us, but protective to them. October decor borrows the aesthetics, the iron keys, crossed pins, chalk sigils, but these were home security systems with theology. And while some folks drew circles on beams, others drew crowds to bonfires. Now, eventually the fear moved indoors, and cardboard corridors learned to scream on cue, and the humble church maze grew up into haunt season. Now, modern haunt culture grows from church basements and JC's fundraisers. Now, JCs are the United States Junior Chambers, which is a leadership training for people between 18 and 40. And these are where the cardboard corridors, peeled grape eyeballs, and actors with day jobs start to come to life. The 1970s to the 1990s took to professionalize Halloween, with safety codes, black flame candles, pneumatic scares, and design teams who treat fog machines like Stradivari. Theme parks formalized the format as well, with Fright Nights, Halloween Horror Nights, and suddenly October is a tourism economy. Today, the haunt industry sits alongside costumes and candies as a major revenue stream. Home haunters run neighborhoods like micro-Imagineers. The through line, though, is controlled fear plus clear exits equals repeat customers. Now, behind every fog machine is a budget, and behind every grin is a gourd. So let's pop the hood on October's favorite fruit and the supply chain that paints the month orange. Now, in terms of pumpkins, we carve cucarbita pepo, or field pumpkins bred for size of the shell. We carve those way more than C. maxima or C. moschata, though the pie on your table is most often from a tan Dickinson squash, a moschata cultivar processed into pumpkin puree. Now, the carving varieties of pumpkins favor wall thickness and stem integrity. Pie varieties, however, favor dry matter and flavor. In weather, swings matter. Late rains and early frosts can clobber yields and prices. Storage and transport create the porch to compost pipeline, and breeders now select for handle strength because nothing ruins October mood like a stemless gourd. Now, earlier I had told you that the scooper gets the seeds, and I encourage you to roast those seeds. Culinary courage is encouraged for the season of October. Now, where there's mass production, there's mass perception, and occasionally mass panic. A few myths and one very convenient clock change walk together. Now, for Halloween, everyone has mostly heard their parents say never take candy from strangers, but with Halloween, the poison candy from strangers story looms large. Now, verified cases that match the myth are microscopic and are often misreported or involve someone known to the child. Yet, the panic changed the behavior. Factories started sealing candy as a norm. Hospitals probably saw a lot more x-rays back in the day, and a permanent PSA voice was implemented on the local news. Now, a policy wrinkle that occurred in the U.S., the Energy Policy Act of 2005, pushed the end of daylight savings to the first Saturday in November. It became effective in 2007, which conveniently gives most neighborhoods more light for trick-or-treating. Now, was that the official reason that Big Candy lobbied for a Halloween-friendly clock? Probably not, but they certainly tried, I'm sure. I like to imagine a suited businessman in a boardroom somewhere saying, "We need to move these mini buys right before Q4 closes or we'll lose all of our stock." Now, fear we don't need, we can retire. And care we do need, we can expand. Neighborhoods made the move to make the night kinder and wider for every kid on the block. Now, this specifically is about the Teal Pumpkin Project, which tells families with allergies you're safe here equals non-food treats await. Some parents use visual cues for sensory-friendly routes, while others pace distribution so kids with mobility devices aren't navigating a crowd rush. The online idea of blue buckets equating autism circulates yearly. Families are split still on it, and there's no official standard. But what helps more is a neighborhood that assumes all kids are welcome and doesn't quiz anyone's age, speech, or costume budget. Accessibility isn't a trend with the season, it's just how a ritual proves it deserves to last. And because the block is now the internet, October's workshop went global. The porch became a feed and the makeup mirror became a masterclass. Welcome to Digital October. Now, streaming spread Halloween's look faster than any shipping container could. A makeup tutorial in Sao Paulo becomes a parade face in Seoul. A micro-budget indie scare becomes this year's yard theme 2 continents away. Cosplay culture blurs into Halloween so completely that October functions as a creative showcase. You have foam smiths, makeup artists, prop builders, and projection mappers. Memes also write new lore. You have viral rules of Halloween, ARG-style TikTok haunts, and neighborhood boo bag drops. Now, copyright in this season looks away like a kindly saint, and the fans say thanks by buying official merchandise on November the 1st. But the oldest part of the holiday making together just found a bigger table. Which brings us back to the ember that we started with. Whether it's streamed, carved, sung, or shared by the handful, the job is unchanged for Halloween and the season. To light the dark together. From Samhain's embers to porch pumpkins, from soul cakes to fun-sized treaties, Halloween is our annual bridge between fear and fellowship. We light the dark, we name our dead, we let the smallest among us ring the bell and claim the night with manners. Now, if you enjoyed this history haunt and it hit the spot, follow Naked History on Apple Podcast and Spotify, and leave a 5-star review with your cleverest seasonal pun, as it appeases the algorithm, and I'm told the Ishi have excellent taste in wordplay. If you guys would like, send us your regional rituals and photographs of your ofrenda, lanterns, or front yard 10-foot skeleton debates. The best ones will go into our debrief next episode. And speaking of next episode, we trade in our lanterns for long tables, and we step into a story that you think that you know. The next episode will be the Thanksgiving that we don't tell. We open with 2 tables, 1 story, a mythic 1621 tableau, and across it, the record from the Wampanoag diplomatic encounter. What if the first Thanksgiving wasn't a beginning, but an ending? All that and more in the next main episode of Naked History. One final mention, I just want to thank everybody for suffering through the pronunciations with me. Some of these I've never heard of, and I've tried my best, I promise. But if I did mispronounce anything, please let me know. I'd love to get it right by the next time. So, I've been Dylan Gassaway, and this has been Naked History. Keep your lanterns honest, your candy bowls generous, and your curiosity louder than the wind. Happy Halloween, and I'll see you at the shoreline between myth and memory. Have a good one.